This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Creepypastas, the spooky virtual ghost stories that everyone hates to love. You know the drill by now, an iceberg is a list of topics ranked in order of obscurity. The well-known and famous, or sometimes infamous entries are at the top and slowly get more obscure the further down that you go, with the most esoteric and at times disturbing entries found at the bottom. Today we're going to be jumping into tier 3 of the Creepypasta Iceberg. Now you can watch the previous 2 videos if you want, but if you haven't, this video is still going to make perfect sense. Now this tier is super interesting. Most of these creepypastas I didn't know before I started doing research for this video. There's a super wide variety as well, from r/nosleep classics to really cool video game creepypastas, and I'm not gonna lie, there are quite a few duds sprinkled in. I also want to mention before we jump in that this iceberg video will contain mentions of some disturbing topics. We're dealing with horror stories here, so it's kind of par for the course, but I won't be going into anything in too much gruesome or graphic detail, and anything that's super offensive or scary or not YouTube friendly, we will be skipping over or just going over very briefly. As always, I'd like to thank the Reddit user Avag Skeletorium for creating this creepypasta iceberg. A link to the original will be included in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into the third installment of our journey into the creepypasta iceberg. Funny Mouth. Written by Slime Beast, the author behind famous creepypastas Abandoned by Disney and I Hate You, which we'll actually be covering later in this video, Funny Mouth is a short horror story about a strange forum user. When the author logs onto his website, refersales.com, he and a fellow admin notice a strange new user called Funny Mouth in the chat. The character is kind of a riff on the type of inexperienced internet user that misspells everything and overuses emotes, with Funny Mouth typing out nonsensical strings of words and frequently sending large, wide-eyed emotes over and over. The author quickly tires of this, but can't shake a strange feeling, as from that night onwards they begin having strange nightmares. In them, the author can feel what he thinks is a slimy worm crawling over his mouth and wakes up with strange residue there, as well as 4 imprints on the bed as if something was kneeling over him. To make things even worse, Funny Mouth begins emailing him, despite, as far as he can tell, nobody giving the strange user his information. Despite blocking Funny Mouth, the author is soon emailed by a fellow admin alerting him that refersales.com is down. He checks the website, and to his horror it shows a distorted gaping face made up of tiny text which reads Funny Mouth. The next night, when the author has a nightmare, he wakes up and looks in the mirror, seeing that his jaw has been unhinged. He laughs, amused by his new funny mouth, and logs into the Refer Sales chat, beginning to spout the same bizarre lines that Funny Mouth himself used in the beginning. Honestly, I really like the idea of a creepypasta based around like a chat forum that riffs on the idea of like the noob internet user for horror purposes. It gets pretty silly towards the end though, with the author becoming like the next incarnation of Funny Mouth. As we've discussed a lot, and as we will continue to discuss throughout this video, creepypastas often ruin themselves at the last hurdle by adding some super dramatic and overwrought twist. It's goofy, it's silly, and it happens all the time. Trust me. Chatroom 98. Chatroom 98 is generally considered to be a pretty classic creepypasta, and after reading it, I don't really know why. The story is narrated by a 16-year-old called David Argento, who found a strange disc in his attic simply labeled Chatroom 98 in black marker pen. Upon inserting the disc and starting up the program, David discovers that Chatroom 98 isn't a chat room at all, but an interactive artificial intelligence that he can converse with. The conversation starts off normal, but then becomes creepy and ends with a jump scare of a smiling man that pops up on David's computer and causes him to pass out and have to be taken to a psychiatric ward. The story ends with the lines, "Now that I have written the story, I urge everybody to watch out. If you see a red CD-ROM case, throw it away. Do not open it and do not use it. I am now going to jump out a 3rd-story window. If anyone tries to resuscitate me, then fuck you too." Truly a piece of literary genius. Pale Luna. Pale Luna is actually one of my favorite creepypastas of all time, because despite the number of times that I've shit-talked to them, I actually really like video game creepypastas. They're not often done well, but when they are, it's awesome, and what can I say, I'm a basement-dwelling nerd at heart. Pale Luna was originally posted to the Something Awful forums in 2011 by a user called Panko. The creepypasta describes an obscure text-adventure video game that was circulated around software swap parties in the San Francisco Bay Area, very few copies of of which exist today. In the game, the player would find themselves in a forest with paths to the north, west, and east. Picking any direction other than the correct one would lead to the computer freezing, and even if the correct direction was chosen, the screen would merely repeat itself over and over again. Most players threw out their copies after the first few attempts, assuming that it was some broken game or unfinished prototype, but one player called Michael Nevins actually discovered the correct path after 5 hours of consecutive tries. The game text then read, "Pale Luna smiles wide. There are no paths. Pale Luna smiles wide. The ground is soft. Pale Luna smiles wide. Here. Command?" After another hour, Michael finally figured out the right combination of commands: dig hole, drop gold, and fill hole. The game then congratulated him and gave them the coordinates to a large sprawling national park nearby, and determined to finish the game, Michael set out. He followed the coordinates, which he noticed roughly correlated to the various turns that he took within the game, and expecting to find buried treasure, instead dug up the head of a deceased body, later confirmed to be a young girl who had gone missing in the area a year and a half prior. The creepypasta ends by stating that the rest of the body was never found, and collectors are known to pay extremely high prices for copies of Pale Luna today. Pale Luna is great. It utilizes the old text adventure format for horror, which I feel like is really underutilized, and it brilliantly uses obscure old software swapping communities to explain why the game can't be found today and why there's no traces of it, instead of being like, "I found this haunted copy of Batman Arkham Asylum at EB Games, ooh." It's short, it's simple, it's cohesive, and there's no scary ghost-related twist at the end, which is a win in my book. The Diary of Mr. Welldone. This creepypasta opens with the line, "Hello, I am Mr. Welldone. I watched the copulation which conceived you and I screamed in horror." Yeah, this one isn't good, like at all. It's basically a long ramble about how life is meaningless and everything is horrible and scary, written in character as this mysterious being known as Mr. Welldone. Why is he called Mr. Welldone? I don't know, it's never really explained. Maybe it's how he likes his steak. Reading this felt like being monologued at by an edgy 13-year-old that's just started reading Nietzsche, and here are a few examples to show you what I mean. Humanity disgusts me for its constant squabbling for little pieces of paper, hierarchical conflicts for power that exist only in the imaginations of those involved, and the pointless use of lives in order to sustain nothing but a paltry level of comfort. Many fellows, in their markedly less than infinite wisdom, choose to prove their gender and sexual orientation by seeking out a locale rumored to be frequented with events of the supernatural. What a loathsome and paradoxical term, supernatural. How can a thing be above nature when it is naturally occurring? I digress. Like, at the risk of sounding like an old coot, go do your math homework or something. I'm sure I would have thought this was cool and deep when I was 12, but I'm not. Cupcakes. I've actually already covered cupcakes pretty in depth on my channel before in a video about My Little Pony creepypastas, but here's a quick rundown. Cupcakes was a My Little Pony fanfic published in early 2011, only about 3 months after the show first aired. It gained popularity on 4chan due to the early brony fandom that was forming on the site at the time, as well as 4chan's general proclivity for gross and shocking content. The fanfic followed an evil version of Pinkie Pie who wore a cape made out of stitched cutie marks and a necklace of unicorn horns as she tortured Rainbow Dash and quite literally made her into cupcakes. The fanfic isn't particularly well written or good, but it's one of the earliest instances of creepypasta within the My Little Pony community, and for that reason it's become infamous within the fandom. Lost Silver. If you were into Pokemon in the 2010s, you've definitely read the Lost Silver creepypasta and definitely had very unserious Pokemon related nightmares after reading it. Or maybe that was just me. In the story, the author buys a used copy of Pokemon Silver from a GameStop for $10. The previous save file hadn't been wiped, so he opened it and was shocked to discover that the previous player had put 999 hours into the game and had every single Pokemon in the Pokédex. Their team consisted of 5 unknowns, which spelled out leave, and a Cyndaquil named Hurry. After exploring several creepy red rooms, all of which required the move Flash to light up, a notification popped up alerting the author that Cyndaquil had fainted. He checked his party and all of his Pokemon had been replaced by 6 unknowns that spelled out he died, which as a kid was scary but in retrospect is kinda hilarious. The player's sprite begins to deteriorate with both arms and legs disappearing and bloody tears beginning to come out of his eyes, and take a shot for hyper-realistic blood eyes if you're playing the drinking game at home. The story just gets more convoluted and long from here. I think that Lost Silver is really interesting because of its place in the early Pokemon creepypasta canon, but aside from that, there's not really much to it. SpongeBob bootleg episode. If you're anything like me, you've seen this image floating around on various places on the internet throughout the years, but never knew that it actually comes from a SpongeBob creepypasta. This image was taken from a split-second frame in a corrupted bootleg of the SpongeBob SquarePants episode Dumped. Other than the image, the rest of the video is composed of incomprehensible jumbles of colors, static, or just black screens. The short, and I really do mean short, it's only 3 paragraphs long, creepypasta ends with the claim that if you stare at the image long enough, SpongeBob will blink. Hey, creepypastas are pretty scary, but you know what doesn't have to be scary? Making a website. Squarespace has thousands of unique and stunning website templates which you can then customize, update content, and add features to fit your needs. You can make any Squarespace template do whatever you want, and so your amazing and epic ideas, projects, and brands stand out online on every device. Whether you sell physical or digital products, Squarespace has the tools that you need to start selling online, all while looking stunning, sleek, and professional. You can easily sell custom merch and create a passive income stream that engages your audience and scales your brand. Squarespace is a brilliant solution for merch, whether you're a small creator, a business, or just someone who wants to sell silly shirts and mugs. Design your products and production, inventory, and shipping are handled for you, saving you time and money. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, pun intended, when it comes to what Squarespace can do for you. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/izzies to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. A huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and now let's jump back into the spooky, scary world of the Creepypasta Iceberg. Misfortune.gb. Misfortune.gb is a fictional puzzle adventure title for the Game Boy which is only rumored to exist due to the lack of hard evidence such as ROMs or cartridges. The game supposedly follows a young boy as he must complete puzzles after making a deal with a demon. It's rumored that failing or dying in the game causes players to suffer negative mental effects and fall ill because of the disharmonic and disturbing music that plays throughout the game. The most unique thing about Misfortune.gb, you know, aside from the fact that it's cursed, is that you can't play it, at least not on purpose. The only way that players could access it is by performing glitches or exploits in random copies of other Game Boy titles such as The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening and Pokemon Red. I actually really like Misfortune.gb. The art that accompanies it is really awesome, and I think it's a really unique idea to have this weird spooky game that you can only play by accidentally stumbling into it while encountering a glitch in another completely unrelated game. Plus the demon is just straight up cute. I mean, you're telling me this guy's gonna curse me? I wanna hug him. Ash's coma theory. This is a popular Pokemon fan theory which puts forth the idea that Ash Ketchum, the primary protagonist of the Pokemon anime, is actually in a coma throughout the entire series. In the very first episode of the anime, while trying to rush Pikachu to a Pokemon Center on a bike, Ash is chased by a flock of Spearow who cause him to crash his bike. In one last attempt to ward off the flock, Pikachu uses a lightning attack that causes a massive explosion of light to knock everyone out. It's theorized that either the bike crash or the massive jolt of electricity caused Ash to fall into a coma, and all of Ash's whimsical and magical adventures are just figments of his imagination as he lays in the hospital. Ash's coma theory really helped to popularize the dead/in a coma trope. Take pretty much any franchise nowadays, especially ones for children, and there will be a theory about the characters being dead or in a coma or seriously mentally ill, and for better or for worse, Ash's coma theory is to thank for that. The Grey Man. The Grey Man is a creepypasta revolving around the game LSD Dream Emulator, a cult classic PlayStation game released in 1998. I was pleasantly surprised to discover that there even was an LSD Dream Emulator creepypasta. It's a relatively obscure game, and it's so bizarre, so liminal, and so creepy that it's really ripe for horror enthusiasts to write about. The Grey Man is a character from the game which will randomly pop up and startle the player, and in this creepypasta the character begins repeatedly popping up in the author's friend's game, eventually driving him mad. Whenever he sleeps, he dreams that he is being chased or tortured by the Grey Man for weeks at a time, and he eventually becomes too afraid to sleep. He stops showing up at school, and one night startles the author by coming to his house and begging him to delete the game and files from his laptop before disappearing into the night. His body is later found with self-inflicted wounds. I think the scary, obscure PS1 game about weird dreams actually leaking into your real life and haunting your dreams is a really cool idea, and as I said earlier, this game absolutely lends itself to scary stories and theories. Tominos Hell. Okay, this one's actually super interesting. Tominos Hell is a poem by Japanese poet and literary scholar Yasuo Saijo, published in 1919. Many years later, sometime during the 2010s, an online rumor began to spread that reading this poem would bring you misfortune, curse you, or lead to some other terrible fate. I'm going to read the poem to you now, don't worry, nothing is going to happen, but just in case if you are scared of getting cursed, feel free to skip forward a little bit. Also, credit to David Bowles for the English translation of this poem. Elder sister vomits blood, younger sister's breathing fire, while sweet little Tomino just spits up the jewels. All alone does Tomino go falling into that hell, a hell of utter darkness without even flowers. Is Tomino's big sister the one who whips him? The purpose of the scourging hangs dark in his mind, lashing and thrashing him, but never quite shattering. One sure path to Avicii, the eternal hell, into that blackest of hells, guide him now, I pray. To the golden sheep, to the nightingale. How much did he put in that leather pouch to prepare for his trek to the eternal hell? Spring is coming, to the valley, to the wood, to the spiraling chasms of the blackest hell, the nightingale in her cage, the sheep aboard the wagon, the tears well up in the eyes of sweet little Tomino. Sing, O nightingale, in the vast misty forest. He screams, he only misses his little sister. His wailing desperation echoes throughout hell. A fox peony opens its golden petals, down past the 7 mountains and 7 rivers of hell, the solitary journey of sweet little Tomino. If in this hell they be found, may they then come to me, please, those sharp spikes of punishment from Needle Mountain. Not just on some empty whim is flesh pierced with blood-red pins. They serve as hellish signposts for sweet little Tomino. Tominos Hell is actually a really beautiful piece of poetry. Dark and eerie, of course, but it's wonderfully written and a really fantastic piece of horror literature. Of course, the curse isn't real, as evidenced by the fact that I read out the whole poem and nothing has or will happen to me. I'm pretty confident about that, and I'm not the only one who's read out this poem before, trust me. Tominos Hell is just one of many pieces of horror literature and art that's been taken out of its original context and made into a "if you look at this you'll die" creepypasta. Another example of this, funnily enough, is the very art that accompanies the story. This piece of art is often shared around the internet with claims that it's haunted, and even so much as looking at it will curse you. In reality, this piece is by Yuko Tatsushima and is called I Can't Be a Bride Anymore, dealing with themes of abuse. Tatsushima has a large body of beautiful, bizarre, and thought-provoking artwork that deals with a huge range of dark and serious subject matter, which I definitely recommend checking out if that's your cup of tea. But it really goes to show how often really intricate and beautiful pieces of horror literature and art are taken out of their original context and repackaged on cheap horror sites as nightmare fuel or cursed images, when they should be allowed to stand on their own merits. I Hate You. I Hate You is a Mario creepypasta in which the author finds a secret area in Mario World featuring strange bloody sprites and a reoccurring message scrawled in blood reading I hate you and why won't you die. Though the author speculates over who these messages could be from, it's soon revealed that Luigi himself has been behind them the whole time. And okay, if this creepypasta premise couldn't get any sillier, I just really need to read this excerpt out to you because it's amazing. Quote, "The messages scrawled on the walls, I hate you and why won't you die? Luigi. He's always been Mario's second banana, the player too, the one who doesn't get the princess in these early games. No matter how identical he is to Mario in skill set and ability and tenaciousness and bravery, at the end of the day the game is Super Mario Bros. And he's just the brother. How he must have hated Mario. Who among us wouldn't? Think about it. No matter what happens, Mario always comes back. No matter how many corpses he leaves littering the battlefield, he's always there once more to leap and share and get all the adoration. From day one, from the original Mario Bros. Onward, it had always been an inside job." This creepypasta was written by Slimebeast, who had quite a few famous creepypastas under his belt, and is clearly a Mario Bros. Spin on Godzilla NES, complete with custom sprite artwork for the screenshots. It's silly and overblown, but it knows that it's silly and overblown. Annie96 is typing. Published in 2014, this creepypasta is written in the format of a WhatsApp text conversation between two teens, Annie96 and McDavie. While their late night conversation starts off pretty normal, Annie begins mentioning strange sounds outside that sound like footsteps. When she goes to check, she sees a man digging through the garden. When the mysterious figure turns around to look at Annie, she discovers that it looks identical to David. Thinking that he's just playing a prank on her, she accuses him and then begins to panic as it sets in for both of them that this isn't a game, nor is the figure human. Annie hides in her closet with a weapon, still texting David as he assures her that the police are on their way. Suddenly she claims that the creature is no longer there, and her texts instantly go back to normal with an upbeat tone. The story ends with David questioning whether it really is Annie that he's messaging anymore. The thing that I appreciate most about this creepypasta is how much of a fuckboy David is throughout the whole thing. Shit, I think I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. I'm home alone. The fam are on holiday, remember? I told you this. Really? Till when? We should hang out. It has to be a friend of yours, David, playing a sick prank. How else could he be wearing your jacket? There are loads of jackets like that. My friends don't look anything like me. You just have me on your mind. This has something to do with you, David. Only you can make it stop. Think fast. It might be because I think about you so much. I think about you all the time. Gotta respect the dude for shooting his shot in a life or death situation. God's mouth. This creepypasta wins the award for worst opening that doesn't make me want to read the story at all with this gem, quote, "I huffed and puffed under my breath as I stared into God's mouth. I felt like the big bad wolf ready to interrupt the three innocent little pigs as they hurriedly fortified their makeshift homes. I grinned at this thought and then turned my head to look for Margaret. She was a couple of feet down the hill from the entrance of the cave, holding a walking stick close to her petite breasts." Just let that sink in for a minute. God's Mouth is a short horror story about a cave called God's Mouth, which is actually sentient and eats people. The two protagonists, Nathan and Margaret, venture into the cave while on vacation and quickly find themselves turned around, unable to figure out which way they came. As they go deeper into the cave, the passages begin to twist and turn, separating the two until they discover that God's teeth, the jagged rock formations and stalactites within the cave, are slowly closing in on them, ready to chew them up. It's actually a really cool premise for a short story. I really like the atmosphere and the idea that it sets up, but it's definitely ruined by some very subpar and unnecessarily breast-heavy writing at points. Arizona. Not too much to say about this one. It's a pretty cut and dry ghost story set in the desert of Arizona, with our main two protagonists stopping at an abandoned gas station and stumbling upon some disturbing figures that begin to haunt their every move, driving them to insanity. The Pocket. The Pocket is a creepypasta character which takes on the form of a grotesque creature with hollow eyes and a wide smile, and which wears the faces of its victims. For some reason, the image always associated with it is this image of SCP-1471, which is lazy to say the least. Stairs. Stairs is a short horror story of an old woman who was wheelchair bound and had to be carried up and down the stairs by her carer. One day the police were called as the carer had been murdered. When they arrived, her body was found on the first floor with the old woman in her wheelchair on the second floor. She was immediately ruled out as a suspect, though when the police went upstairs to check the house for clues, one small detail sent chills down their spine. The second story of the house didn't have a phone. The Wanderer. This creepypasta weaves an urban legend about this image of a dark road at night with an extremely faint figure in the middle. Though it's really hard to make out, it's said to be a slightly translucent figure with large spider-like appendages. The image is alleged to have been circulating around the internet since the 90s, and it has been known to cause headaches, nightmares, and insanity in those who view it, even causing some to go missing or harm themselves in an attempt to escape the Wanderer. Liars. Liars is essentially a dollar store brand Jeff the Killer. Normal kid gets bullied, bullies throw acid on his face, kid gets treated at hospital but is now a shell of his former self, kid goes insane and kills bullies, and then kid becomes a spooky creepypasta killer. Except instead of saying go to sleep, he says liars because his bullies attacked him and then lied about what happened. Very clever. The story even uses a creepy photoshopped image of a figure with a distorted mouth and eyes. Where Bad Kids Go. Where Bad Kids Go is a short creepypasta focusing on a Lebanese children's show of the same name. The author watched the show as a child and vividly remembered the closing sequence, a shot which slowly zoomed in on a rusted metal door with faint cries and screams coming from inside, accompanied by the text, "That's where bad kids go." The author later became a photojournalist and travelled to the derelict studio where the show was produced. Discovering the rusted metal door led to a room full of bones with a caged microphone on the roof. The Dawn is Your Enemy. The Dawn is Your Enemy was a real-life Adult Swim sign-off bumper which aired between 2005 to 2010, created to scare kids that had been staying up too late watching Adult Swim. It was later turned into a creepypasta urban legend that claimed that the full audio clip includes sounds of screaming and torture and was accidentally aired in full one morning on Adult Swim, leading many to question where the studio had acquired that audio in the first place. The Dawn is Your Enemy is such a cool bumper and actually reminds me of how cool and creative a lot of Adult Swim's bumps have been over the years. The creepypasta, not so much. Barasa. Barasa is generally praised as one of the best, most well-written and scary creepypastas out there, so much so that it was made into a 2-season psychological thriller podcast starring Cole Sprouse. Whether you see that as glowing praise or a damning indictment depends entirely on how you feel about the Sprouse twins. The story follows a young boy called Sam who moves to an old mining town in Missouri and struggles to adjust to the many strange goings-on there, especially the deep metal grinding noise that emanates from Barasa, a mysterious place in the mountains where terrible things happen, or so the local kids say. When Sam's sister goes missing, it starts a nearly decade-long search for answers, and as more and more girls go missing, Sam and his friends realize that the townspeople may know more than they're letting on. I'm not going to spoil anymore because the story's pretty epic and definitely worth checking out, and also because it deals with a lot of NSFW subject matter which YouTube really wouldn't like me talking about, so if you do decide to read it, make sure to check out the trigger warnings first. Also, the author, Rebecca Klingel, was later hired as a writer on a bunch of super popular Netflix horror series like The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, and The Fall of the House of Usher, and I think that's really cool. I love seeing talented creatives get their start in the industry with like creepypasta or fan animations or fan art. It's really wholesome, I just love to see it. The Purple Balloon. In The Purple Balloon, a young girl called Alexa gets into a car crash, waking up on a desolate street to see a strange menacing jester who gives the girl a purple balloon. She then wakes up again, this time in the real world and in the arms of her father who rescued her from the wreckage. While recovering in the hospital, a doctor comes in holding a purple balloon. Yeah, I don't know either. White with Red. White with Red is a super iconic early creepypasta dating all the way back to 2008. It's honestly less of a creepypasta and more of a gimmicky campfire story. I even remember this one circulating around my school at one point during my childhood. You might have heard it. It's the one where a guy checks into a hotel and the lady at the check-in desk tells him that there's a room down the hall that's locked and under no circumstances is anyone to go in there. He heeds the warning the first night, but curiosity soon gets the best of him and he looks through the keyhole. Chilly air blows through and he sees a hotel room just like his with a very pale woman facing the corner. The next night he checks again but only sees red. He figures the inhabitants must have caught him snooping and covered up the keyhole, but the next morning when he checks out he mentions it to the lady at the desk who, with a shiver, reveals that a man murdered his wife in that room and her ghost haunts it. A ghost with completely pale white skin and blood red eyes. Ooh. Out with a bang. Gonna keep this one short because it deals with subject matter that YouTube really wouldn't like me to talk about, but I'm still gonna include it because it was surprisingly good. The story has a super simple premise. Whenever the author pretends to shoot someone with finger guns like as a kid or even just points at their face in an argument, they actually get shot. It's definitely written in a pretty dark and gory way, but there's a sort of dark humor to the way that it's written, and the entire premise is super goofy in general, which in my opinion, more creepypasta stories need to embrace that vibe. The Theatre. This creepypasta claims the existence of an old PC game released in the 90s called The Theatre. The game was rudimentary and the gameplay simply consisted of entering a movie theatre lobby, talking to a pixelated character called the ticket taker who would tell you to enjoy the movie, and walking down the hallway to the theatre before the game would fade to black and send you back to the lobby. Sounds like some unfinished prototype or coding project, but players claim that after a certain number of cycles, going down the hallway and restarting in the lobby, strange things would begin to happen. Bizarre noises would play, the ticket taker's sprite would go missing, the hallway would get longer and darker, and eventually a sprite with a swirl for a face, simply referred to as the swirly-headed man, would appear. His speech would be garbled and illegible, though one distorted soundbite was widely theorized to have said never reach the other levels. Players reported an overwhelming feeling of dread and uneasiness when looking at the swirly-headed man, and in some cycles all of the movie posters on the wall would be replaced with pictures of the character. Despite this cryptic line of dialogue, no one has ever discovered these supposed other levels, and the mystery of the theatre, who it was made by and what it is, remains a mystery. I honestly really like this creepypasta, though I think it would be far better if it didn't end by saying that players started seeing the swirly-headed man in real life. I've said it before and I'll say it again, creepypastas always have to ruin the momentum that they've built up by adding some like out of nowhere scary twist where the thing becomes real, and it's always silly and it always makes me sad. It comes off as so insecure, your story would be just as scary if the 90s PC game character didn't come to life. I'm just saying. Ronald McDonald house. When a troubled kid is unable to find a suitable family in the foster care system, their caseworker gives them an ultimatum. Military school or a halfway house for troubled teens called the Ronald McDonald house. Long story short, it's an insane house of horrors where they keep kids in white padded rooms and gangs of deranged nurses dressed up in clown outfits torture and maim them. Hey, it's better than contributing to the military industrial complex, am I right? Waka waka. Creepypasta fandom user Minecraft8 wrote, quote, "Welp, I'm never eating at McDonald's again," shivers and becomes paranoid. A glowing review if there ever was one. Boothworld Industries. Boothworld Industries is an infamous r/nosleep story written back in 2013. In it, the OP moves into a new house and, expecting a call from a plumber, gets a call from a company called Boothworld Industries. They ask him for a name, and when he gives his own name, they insist that it must be the name of another person. Confused, he gives them the name of his ex-girlfriend, and they confirm that his quote-unquote remodeling is scheduled for later that day. Bewildered and wondering if the call was from the plumbing company after all, he confirms the appointment, but then is shocked later when he receives a call from a panicked voice which seems to be his ex-girlfriend begging for help and struggling for breath. Before the line cuts off and Boothworld Industries asks if his experience was satisfactory. Though initially frightened, the OP confirms that his experience was indeed satisfactory and even asks to book another appointment. However, the operator tells him that his own remodeling is scheduled for later on in the week unless he recruits 1,000 new members. In the original r/nosleep post, the OP includes a number and asks people to help him by calling and signing up, and the cool thing about this is that the number actually worked and people could call up and hear a voice message from Boothworld Industries.
You have reached Boothworld Industries. Your number has been logged and traced. A service representative will be with you shortly for remodeling. We at Boothworld Industries say thanks. You have a marvelous day.
Super inventive, especially for one of the earlier no-sleep creepypastas. Then Who Was Phone? Then Who Was Phone is a parody/joke creepypasta written on 4chan's Export in 2008 with the purpose of making fun of cheap and poorly written internet horror stories and creepypasta. So you're with your honey and you're making out when the phone rings. You answer it and the Vios is, "What are you doing with my daughter?" You tell your girl and she say, "My dad is dead." Then who was phone? The popularization of this joke story has led to the phrase "then who was phone" becoming a meme and a shorthand way to indicate that a story is of poor quality. So, next time you want to roast your buddy who writes stories, drop him one of these. The Passenger. The Passenger, written by Michael Whitehouse, is a short horror story about a woman who encounters a terrifying stranger on a late-night bus ride. After falling asleep, Ruby, a single mother, wakes up to find a strange hooded figure sitting right next to her despite the fact that the entire bus is empty. They make Ruby intensely uncomfortable, and after a few failed attempts at breaking the ice, the figure begins to scratch something into the seat underneath them, the sound of their nails scratching against the plastic horrible and shrill. After asking them to stop, Ruby sees their reflection in the bus window and realizes that they are far from human, with blackened eyes and a deformed gaping mouth. She immediately gets up and flees, and after nearly getting caught by the passenger, manages to break through the unconscious driver's cubicle to press the emergency button and release the doors. After getting home, she calls the police and an ambulance as her young daughter suffered a near-fatal asthma attack, though thankfully she was saved. The police found no evidence of the passenger but found the words "not yet" etched into the seat that they were sitting on, suggesting that somehow the creature knew that it wasn't Ruby's daughter's time yet. I found a hidden door in my cellar. This is a classic and well-respected story from r/nosleep, and it's pretty much what it says on the tin. The OP finds a hidden door after tearing the wallpaper out of the cellar to renovate it, and despite the fact that this door should lead directly into the neighbor's cellar, it instead leads to a staircase down to another door. Behind this door is a dark room in which the OP finds a strange man hunched over in the corner. The man begins to run at him backwards, and panicked, the OP flees the house and calls the police. They find no trace of the man, and the story ends with the OP regretfully stating that he should have never opened the door, as he feels that the creature was locked down there for a reason. And that brings us to the end of the Creepypasta Iceberg Part 3. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say. How many of these creepypastas do you know? Were any of these like childhood classics? What ones did you find the most scary? Which ones did you find the most not good? At the end of the day though, despite their quality, I love all of these creepypastas. All of them have passion put into them in one way or another, all of them are unique in one way or another, and it's someone's creative outlet, so you know. Anyway, like I said, I'm super curious to hear what you guys have to say, so please do share your opinions, your comments, your experiences in the comment section. I love reading them, and if you have any suggestions for other topics you want me to cover, definitely let me know. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye! A huge thank you to my Garfield overlords over on Patreon: Zoe Mars, Sophie H, Thy Heavenly, Leanne O, Hazy, Jet Secret, Oliver Brains, Blue Mayfeld, Katrina Likes 5e Stuff, Fitzy, Michelle Olsen, Matt LRJ, A Riddle Wrapped in Enigma Hidden by a Question Mark, Chicory, SHSL Sun Sun, Doug, Dana Homegardener, Charlie B, Simon, Xavier Araujo, Helm Hamburger Hand, Dozo Blint, Sheriff Whiskey, Astrian Vortex, Jesse Chisholm, Lee XX, Greg Gunderson, and Joe Bradshaw. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. It means the world. If you want to join these guys over on Patreon, the link will be in the description. And yeah, thank you so much. And I really hope to see you in the next one. Bye!